So in this video I'm going to be going over quickly the texture method I used to create the crates for the first crate and barrel assignment. The things we will learn in this lesson can also be applied to the barrel at the same time. It's going to be easy to texture the barrel because there's only one asset, but in this crate example there's 6 different faces and 4 different sections. So you can see here I've just got my UVs inside Photoshop. This is on I've pre-recorded this video, so I'm just doing a talk over of this. So this is my wood texture I found online. I wanted to get something that's got a lot of nice features on it that I could use for many different areas of the box. So here's where I took the texturing to. I basically just took each one of these little segments as a plank of wood as itself, and I broke up the texture, laid texture in as I saw fit. The center, obviously, I made it a little bit smaller so I could get them wood panels in there. To get these darker lines as well, all I did was make another layer above my texture, turn it to a multiply, and then I took a mid to light brown. So when I start applying that brown, it would be quite a dark brown because it's a multiply layer, but it would be the same colour hue as the actual wood, so it'll just look like a shadow cast by itself. I'm doing that so I can help the texture along with its believability, so that we can kind of help the shaders relax a little bit. So here I'm just showing that each one of these sections is going to be a separate thing, 4 different sections, 4 different textures. I'm not going to go into how I created the actual colour map. So here I wanted to add some nails, so I just made one nail and then I duplicated it a lot over the surface so I could get all these different nails in the top. That's a separate section, this is a separate layer from my actual wood texture, which I then just baked down, or merged down I should say. And then using the gameicons.net website, I took these 4 symbols off, positioned them where I wanted to, and then I put a clipping mask above each layer so that I could actually colour it without directly affecting the original layer itself. Pardon me. So now all I'm doing is making a feathered brush, quite small, a feathered eraser I should say, so I'll make sure it's an eraser, a feathered, which is a soft brush, and then I'm going to erase across these slits in the wood to give a much more believable painted effect to the wood. Instead of just applying one flat texture, I'm actually giving the impression that the paint is going into the cracks. And I'm erasing on the original symbol layer. You can see my layer stack there. I've got a layer and then a colour above it. The layer below that is the actual symbol, and then the colour above it is just the colour I applied. So I'm erasing on the symbol layer. Google's really helpful for if you want to know how to create a clipping mask and what a clipping mask is. So that's my texture done for this. In this case, you could go in and treat it a little bit more, weather it a little bit more. So that's my textures laid out, and I've just condensed everything down into one layer, and then I duplicated it, and I'm basically going to turn the map into this quite quickly. So I'm going to take my diffuse layer, duplicate that group, or duplicate that layer if you've not got a group, and then with that layer selected I'm going to go to image adjustments and then down to black and white here. That's going to turn it black and white. Easy. Now I should say I did this before with the symbols as a separate layer, so I'm only making the wood black and white, I'm not making the symbols black and white. What I've just done there is I've just gone back into images and gone to layers, so images, adjustments, and then over to levels, sorry not layers, levels. And that's where we can actually start adjusting how intense this black and white is. Now remember, in specularity, whatever's brighter becomes more shiny when light hits it, and whatever's darker becomes less reflective. So I've just made my black and white layer that I've just made I've just brought the opacity down a little bit so I can see where the rivets are behind the nails, and then on a new layer I'm just going to go in with a white colour and a solid brush, not a feathered brush, a soft brush, solid brush, and I'm just going to put white dots over the top of where these nails would be, so that when the light hits it, it's going to pick up on the nails a lot more than anything else, which is what I want. So just to recap what I've done so far, I've gone through, chosen my wood texture, basically made my texture, just a colour texture. I've duplicated, then I've got my symbols, put them into place, and then I've merged all them layers down, but I've not merged my symbols into my layers. I've just kept them as a separate layer, and then I've duplicated that layer, turned it black and white, gone to images, and then levels, and then I've messed with the levels so that I've got a really nice high contrast white and black surface, so that I can start to pick out the specularity of the wood and the metal a lot more. And what I'm doing here on a new layer above my black and white map, my black and white layer, I'm putting in these white dots to symbolise where I want the light to pick up on the nails. So with that done, I've got that. So if I go back to my black and white layer and turn up the opacity again, you can see we've got that. So now the nails are going to really jump out when the light hits them. Okay. So I'm going back now and I'm bringing in the symbols, but I'm bringing them in as white, because obviously I want the white of the symbols to be picked up by the light as well. So I'm just merging all them together. With the selection box, I'm going to control C, and I'm going to copy them into this layer. Now, I do have to do a little bit of moving about with my layers to make sure that they're sitting over the top of the originals. And I will do a bit of tweaking later on, because when I apply them to the box, I see that they're a little bit misaligned. So I'm going to rename this layer specular, so I know that anything inside that layer group is a specular. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm going to reduplicate my diffuse layer, and then we're going to create this map. This is called a normal map. And remember, in class, this is the one that really dictates, implies depth to anything. Helps us really give an extra dimension to something which is effectively a flat plane. So I've taken that duplicated layer, that straight diffuse layer, put it in a new layer group so I know what it's called. Know where it is. And then I'm going to go to filter, generate normal, and then you're going to get this. This is basically the tool window so that you can start messing with the settings to get the best results for your chosen object. Now this, at the end of this, it doesn't quite turn out as good as the assets I've uploaded to Sketchfab, because I've gone back and kind of retroactively made these maps again. But you can see what happens when I start messing with a lot of these functions, especially blur and detail scale. If I scale down detail scale, then we lose a lot. We start to lose all that detail. If I scale it up, then that detail comes all the way back, and it actually intensifies the higher you go. All the way up, you can see it's a very, very crazy map. Now, normal maps are, I think I've said this a few times, they're an exercise in restraint. It's very easy to overdo a normal map, and then when you apply it to your surface, it just looks too much. Sometimes you do need to do that. You do need to kind of push a normal map over the edge, especially if it's like deep insets and deep rivets, but for this we don't really need to. So see, these little sliders here have a direct effect. They have a much more controlled effect on our surface, whereas detail scale is basically all of these low, mid, high sliders combined. These low, mid, high basically let you select these specific channels and affect them. I accidentally clicked enter then. If you click enter while you're in that window, it'll assign all the settings. So I'm just going to go back in and just get the settings back to how I want them. Oops, have we still got, here we go. My screen went black then. So now I'm just going to mess with them a little bit. Like I said, the output of this isn't as good as my originals that I uploaded to Sketchfab, but you can see quite quickly what the normal map does. So I'm just messing with it a little bit more. There you go. So now I'm going to start saving these out. So I'm going to save my diffuse or my colour as cube diff, or cube underscore D I should say, because D for diffuse. I'm going to save my specular out as cube underscore S, S for specular. I'm going to save out my normal map as cube underscore naught of N, N for normal. So back in Photoshop, back in Maya I should say, I'm going to apply a blend material to my box, because obviously we've got a specular and we've got a normal, and they only work with blends because the blend has a specular channel, whereas Lambert is a purely absorbent material, not a reflective material. So in color channel, I'm going to click the checkerboard, go down to file, and go to my image name, then find my file, apply that. There we go. So I'm making sure that up there my checkerball is tagged, so we're actually rendering the texture on our surface. And I'm going to go back into here, and then I'm going to apply my specular map. Again, same process. Specular color, checkerboard, find my cube S, apply that. And now I can see that the... oh, I actually fixed it in this version. Okay, cool. So yeah, I guess off video I fixed that. And now I'm going to go back in and apply my normal map. So we do the same thing until we get to here. Now, when you apply a normal map or a bump map, you've got to make sure that you switch use as a tangent space normal. Apply that, and there you go. So that's all my maps applied. And I'm going to make a light in the scene. An area light. Now, a good thing about area lights is if you scale it up using the actual scale tool, as you can see in a minute, it actually intensifies because it makes the light bigger. So you can see there, my box has its specular maps, its bump maps. They're a little bit drastic, they're a bit OTT, but in this, I think it's just to make a point that they have direct effects to our boxes. Okay. So there I'm just going to mess with the specular eccentricity and roll off to kind of get a better specularity. Now remember that we don't do anything, we don't really apply anything inside Maya when we work with games, because we do everything in Engine. But to check very quickly if these maps are working, it's good to do it in Maya, just so you're not going back and forth from your engine. There you go. So I'm panning around looking at my box. Now if you click on your blend material and then click focus, you then opened up to all your maps that you've applied. So I'm going through now, and you can see that I've got all my diffuse, specular and normal maps, and I've gone back into the bump 2D texture, and I'm just messing with that bump depth value. And you can see there underneath it says use as tangent space normal. If we're using like the blue normal map, then that's what you need to have checked. You don't have object space normal selected, and if it's like a black and white map you're using, inside that bump map, make sure you've got bump selected. Again, we do all our rendering inside the engine, so we don't need to worry that much. Now again, like I went over in class, I'm looking over my object and I can see that some of these are the wrong way around, or some of these faces have textures that I don't really want them to have. Like I can see that ammo symbol there is the wrong way around, and obviously I wouldn't want the health symbol on the very top. So I'm going to go in, I've separated my box so it's all separate faces again. I'm going to select that UV and I'm going to rotate it again, flip it around till it's the right way. And I'm going to take this side, where am I? What am I going to do? So I'm going to take this side and I'm going to move it up to the very top so that it's just a blank top. And that's just me displaying what happens when you start moving it around. You see the textures actively change. That's me just rotating around the UVs again to show that once you have them in the right position, you can basically rotate it around and have them at any angle or any position you want, as long as it's relevant to your texture. Obviously you don't want it kind of like at 45 degrees, so you're seeing the weird sort of edges of your texture. You want to make sure that everything lines up correctly. So I've selected all my sides, my middle sides, and I'm just rotating them all as one big group, so that you do have, if you do have multiple faces sharing the same quad, you can manipulate them all at the same time. So you can see there my entire box is just sharing the very top and the tool. So I'm going to make a duplicate. I've combined it before I duplicated it, because if you just duplicate it and move it across, you're going to get some weird movements. So I'm going through and I'm going to make a few different variants of this box. So I've got a tool box, a health box, and an ammo box, straight from the same pack. So in a game situation, we would only be calling one texture to texture all three of these boxes, and you might have something like 20 boxes, 20 pickups inside your scene, which will all be carrying off the same texture. So then our texture call memory is decimated. We've hardly got any texture call memory. I think I'm just messing around here, making a little scene with the boxes. So that's about it for the box. The same process can be applied to when you're doing your barrel with making the textures and stuff. If you have any questions, hopefully this has highlighted everything that people need to know. If you've got any questions, please send me an email as soon as possible as well, because obviously the hand-in for this is next week, it being the first week of October when you hand this in. So I want to see all these in, and if you got any questions, please send me an email as soon as possible. Thank you.